Welcome to the NitWits, a weekly roundtable discussion on the Penn State Nittany Lions, now in its 27th season. Our panel features a longtime Penn State media and NitWits tag team, Neil Rudell of the Altoona Mirror and Mark Brennan of Lions 24/7 with Fight on State. The NitWits are hosted by WTAJ's Ryan Riskey, and each week we welcome a former Nittany Lion as our special guest analyst. The NitWits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, a firm foundation for your financial future. By DeLeo Games, serving the community since 1945. By Reed and Solaney Orthodontics, providing friendly, family-focused orthodontic care in Altoona, Bedford, and Huntington. By McAlear's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. By Remax Results Realty Group, committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service. By Dorman's Jewelry, the answer is always Dorman's. By Brent Kogan Electrical Services, lighting the way for you. By NovaCare, Altoona and State College, the power of physical therapy. By Blair Candy Company, the one-stop shop for all your tailgating needs. Candy, snacks, paper supplies, and more. By Harry's Construction, if you can dream it, we can create it. By Lions 24/7 with Fight on State, your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Monday.
The Beaver Stadium crowd brought the whiteout energy as Penn State opens up Big Ten play with a 21-7 win over Illinois. James Franklin credits the crowd with 7 crucial plays that went in the Nittany Lions' favor. We're going to break everything down. Nittany Nation Overtime is next. Welcome into another edition of Nittany Nation Overtime. I'm your host, Ryan Riskey, and I'm joined by the NitWits, Mark Brennan, Neil Rudell, and former Nittany Lion quarterback Chuck Fusina. And guys, another big win for Penn State in Big Ten play. They held Illinois to just 34 rushing yards.
Yeah, they've made really good halftime adjustments defensively, and I thought got stronger as the game went on. Real positive with the running game. Those guys ran hard. Illinois hung in there for a while. I don't think it was a domination, but 4-0.
Yeah, Brett Bielema, when they came out with this whiteout energy thing, I was a little bit skeptical of it. And then I think Bielema, with his comments, kind of questioning it, I think that brought it all together. So kind of in a weird way, James Franklin used reverse psychology. I mean, that crowd was an absolute factor. The other thing I loved, and I know we'll get into it, there's a lot of talk about what Katron Allen and Nick Singleton did, but the fact that they were able to run the ball the way they did. You lose Sal Wormley early in that game, plug in J.B. Nelson, you're still pounding the ball right down their throat. It wasn't all that long ago that they didn't necessarily, right after the sanctions, have 1 or 2 offensive guards who were of Big Ten caliber. Now you're dipping into your bench. You have J.B. Nelson, Cooper Cousins coming in. Love that.
Right, and then going back to the defense, I mean, it kind of looked, to me, it felt like Manny Diaz was calling the plays in that second half. They were aggressive, getting to the quarterback. Luke Altmaier just looked really uncomfortable, kept getting him to roll out to his left.
Chuck, you were blessed with a great defense when you were at Penn State as well. What did you see yesterday?
Well, after the first drive, I think everyone thought they should have bet the over. But it was some adjustments, of course, were made. I think some of the players said to themselves, what's going on here on the sidelines? You saw a lot of talking, a lot of maybe some screaming, which it should have been, and they adjusted. And like you said, they got very aggressive, and it turned out to be a great defensive showing in the rest of the game.
Yeah, their depth on defense, too. They didn't have DeLuca, and they keep rotating guys in on the defensive line. A lot of guys, 13 tackles for loss. I mean, you're going to win games like that, and 7 sacks. And I think it was just a really overpowering in the second half. I mean, once it was starting with a goal line stand kind of at the end of the half.
Yeah, we were wondering where the sacks were through the first few games, and I don't think we were seeing everything that Tom Allen had in his back pocket. I think in the fourth quarter they had 5 sacks. So that was an instance, going back to what you said, Neil, with the depth, where they just wore that team down. And then when the game's kind of still on the line late, they just unleashed, and you almost felt bad for Altmaier.
Yeah, and then another thing, Neil, going back to the goal line, saying Illinois first and goal at the 2, final minute of the half, looks like they're going to be up 14-7. All of a sudden there's the high snap, then there's the intentional grounding. All of a sudden they're kicking a long field goal and they miss, and then it's 7-7. Penn State goes and scores on their opening drive of the third quarter, and then it's a completely brand new ball game.
Well, I'm wondering, what are you doing in the shotgun at the 1 or 2 yard line, first and goal, with a chance to? And they were moving the ball on the ground. From an Illinois thing, you get a bad snap and then everything. Really, they never recover from that play.
The game's changed. I mean, never before at the 1 yard line would you see that, but you see it in the NFL now. Some teams doing the snap from the center like that. I think on the defensive end, I think Penn State relies on defense with their athleticness and their speed. They're not a power type defense. So I think, like you said, maybe they're going to mix it up more, bring more people at certain times, use their athletic ability compared to just bruising up front and stopping the run. They have to use their quickness, and they proved they could do that in the second half.
Chuck, as a former quarterback, I was curious, what kind of differences did you see maybe from Luke Altmaier going from that first to the second half? Because the first half, he was completing passes. He looked very poised despite the loud crowd noise, except then in the second half, Penn State started getting after him, and he just wasn't able to create that same magic when he was moving the ball.
I could tell you firsthand, when someone's in your face, it's hard. And they were getting in his face. But I thought he did a good job a lot of the times getting away from the rush. I thought they could have had a lot more sacks. And he's a good player. And he made some big plays getting away. But if you keep doing it, you're going to find it make things difficult for the quarterback. And that's what Penn State defense did. When you're trying to throw a ball and there's people like this right in front of you, it's a hard thing to do.
I also think that, for the beginning of this season with Abdul Carter moving to defensive end, we haven't seen the game wrecker part of him. And even in the early part of that game, he seemed a little bit out of position here and there. As the game went on, you could see where he got more and more comfortable and became that disruptive force that I think all of us expected him to be. I think that was a great sign starting Big Ten play.
Mm-hmm. And then obviously, Mark, you touched on the run game earlier. Nick Singleton and Katron Allen rushed for a combined almost 200 yards. It seemed like they just ran the ball really well, and Katron finally scored his first touchdown of the season.
Yeah, they've divided those duties up in the carries really well. It was excellent yesterday because, Singleton has that burst now. You can really see it that he had his freshman year. I think he averaged almost 10 yards a carry, early on through that game. And then Allen came in and was just trucking people. So that bodes well as you move into, you're going to get a couple of the traditional West Coast teams next. I think the running game is going to be center stage.
My favorite part of the running game, and it wasn't Singleton and it wasn't Allen, it was Tyler Warren. They have a 3rd and 5, and Tyler Warren goes into Wildcat. And that was Penn State imposing its will on a team that has a reputation for being physical.
Yeah.
Whatever you say about a Brett Bielema team, they are known for being physical and tough in the trenches. And that was Andy Kotelnicki making a statement saying, this is what we're about. Whether it was the touchdown by Warren, that 3rd and 5, when he just took it and got 10 yards straight up the middle, this is a 6'6", 270-pound guy. Stop me if you can.
Yeah, well, they've made a real push for him for postseason honors, even though it's early in the season, but he's living up to it with his versatility.
He's a weapon. It's fun to watch someone like that who can do so many things, and especially going back to the running game. The old days, it's all get your one good running back and just, ride with them. The game nowadays is you need 2 backs like this. I think it's going to be more of what you're going to see down the future, too. And Singleton runs like he not only is explosive, but he was violent a few times. He went right into people and went in tackles. And Allen, that's the way he does run. He gets over tackles, he keeps going. So it's a great 1-2 punch, and I think they're lucky to have 2 guys that don't mind being in a system like that. That means a lot when they're pushing for each other.
Right, very unselfish. And the play that he made a great catch on the sideline and then bowled over somebody for a first down when the offense kind of needed it.
Absolutely, and obviously there's plenty to like, except it wasn't all pretty in the Big Ten opener. We're going to dissect some concerns going forward. We'll be right back here on Nittany Nation Overtime.
The NitWits are being brought to you by Irwin Financial Raymond James, a firm foundation for your financial future. By DeLeo Games, serving the community since 1945. By McAleer's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. And by Reed and Solaney Orthodontics, providing friendly, family-focused orthodontic care in Altoona, Bedford, and Huntington.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
Welcome back into Nittany Nation Overtime. Ryan Riskey joined by Mark Brennan, Neil Rudell, and former Nittany Lion quarterback Chuck Fusina. And guys, once again, penalties kind of ate Penn State. This is the first week they did win the penalty battle. However, they still had 6 penalties for 63 yards, including what could have been a crucial one after A.J. Harris intercepted the ball and ran it back. And Mark, you and I were in the media room watching that, and it was just a bad penalty that had no impact on the play.
You know, that one, I'm not going to say that it's okay, but it's a young player, Zion Tracy, okay? He got a little bit excited, and again, never should have done it. We were working our way down to the field and had to put our stuff in the media room. The ones that bother me even more, I mean, you have Amin Vanover with 2 penalties in the first quarter. Abdul Carter jumping off sides again, just over and over with this stuff. And that's not been typical of Franklin's teams, and this will cost them a game if they don't get it tightened
it's
up.
28 now on the season. They had 6 yesterday. They had 2 that were declined because it was a free play because they made 2 penalties on a couple plays. Yeah, I agree. The pre-snap penalties, some unsportsmanlikes at the sidelines, but just more discipline is needed. He has addressed it. He's called it embarrassing, and they really need to get that cleaned up.
Called it embarrassing, and then nothing changed.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and you do like hearing that from a coach where he didn't hide that he is not happy with all the penalties they've been taking.
I will say that his comment about Rojas, I thought, as you looked at the replay of that, I can't quite figure that out. Are they playing football out there, or are they not? I mean, I thought he was just basically trying to get through somebody who was attempting to block him. But overall, I mean, you just have to cut it down. Chuck, I'm sure your teams, part of the key that Joe always preached was what? Don't commit those penalties.
Don't
and how
beat
key
yourself.
is it? Yeah.
Well, the good thing about it is that penalties, things like that, are correctable. If you're getting outplayed and you're getting blown out at the line of scrimmage, or you're just not having any success at all on either the offensive end or defensive end, and you're in trouble. You might have to be changing your depth chart. But with this, I guarantee it's a good thing to happen in the beginning of the season, and as you move on, let's see next week as they play, another good opponent and even a better opponent, down the road.
Yeah.
It can be correctable.
And what do you think is the key, especially the pre-snap penalties, whether it's someone jumping off sides or committing a false start? Like, what is the key to trying to fix that up?
Well, I'm sure they're going to be in practice this week with the silent counts and the quick counts and just hearing different voice audibles, how a quarterback does it. And it just takes discipline. And it's not even Coach Franklin, it's their own coaches being on them on the practice field and, hey, we can't do this anymore. And it'll come.
Yeah, the other issue is the place kicker. I mean, that scab has now been torn off, and they look like they're going to have to make a change.
I mean, Sanders, since the beginning of last season, is 3 for 9 on field goals, and he seems like a great kid, except you got to start making more. And that kept it a 1-score game and kept Illinois in it much longer than they should have been.
Yeah, you've seen him at practice. I've seen him at practice. I mean, this kid has a thunderous leg, and I've said it over and over again. But when he's kicking in Haluba Hall, it just reverberates around the place. And the other thing I'd like to say
Can they move the games?
No, Neil, in all seriousness, after practice, he was available a couple weeks ago, and this kid could not have been more gracious.
Yeah.
He said, you know what, just paraphrasing, that he kind of deserved to lose the job last year. It was his thing to go and fight and get it back. And so somebody who takes accountability like that, you hope things go well for them. But you know what? These are big-time games. They went to Barker for the last extra point, and you have to think that they're going to be looking in a different direction, at least for the next couple games.
Yeah, it's a shame. He does seem like a stand-up guy. They have a transfer in there from Tulsa.
I think Barker's the more of the guy at this point. He's a walk-on, Ryan Barker from down in the Philadelphia area, I think. But he was the guy who came in for the final extra point, so that would indicate to me. And I think he also kicked at the end of the Kent State game.
Yeah, and James, I thought, handled it well after the game. He's sensitive. He wasn't going to make a declaration that
Yeah, you
you're
can't
sitting
bear
him
any
down. But hey, you have UCLA in here this week, and then you're going to hit the road. So you got to get somebody pretty comfortable.
I mean, eventually that's the kind of thing that can cost you. 2 rough or tough road games at USC and at Wisconsin, and then you're home against Ohio State, and you're going to have to be able to kick those field goals in those close games to either make it a 2-score game or maybe try to push a game to overtime or win it before you get to overtime.
Yeah, I mean, it's 14-7, and you passed on a 36-yarder, and then he showed some confidence to go back to him for the 40-yarder. So it's a shame. Penn State has a history of great kickers. You played with several of them, right?
I played with the Barr brothers,
Yeah.
and they were as good as you get back then. And unfortunately, with a schedule like they have in Big Ten, where there's a lot of close games, you have to really make good decisions on either who's going to do it or if and when you are going to make that kick. And to see what happens, what they decide.
It'll be interesting if they go to Barker, if they give Sander one more shot. Anyways, we do have to take another break, but when we're going to come back, we're going to dissect Drew Aller's progress through 4 games.
The NitWits are being brought to you by RE/MAX Results Realty Group, committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service. By Dorman's Jewelry, the answer is always Dorman's. By Blair Candy Company, the one-stop shop for all your tailgating needs. Candy, snacks, paper supplies, and more. And by Harry's Construction. If you can dream it, we can create it.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
Welcome back into Nittany Nation Overtime. Ryan Riskey joined by Mark Brennan, Neil Rudell, and former Nittany Lion quarterback Chuck Fusina. And Chuck, as a former quarterback, we've kind of seen a transformation from Drew Aller this year. What do you think have been the biggest improvements for him going from last year to this year?
Well, Drew's always had the strong arm and the physical ability. No one could ever say anything about that. But I think you see a maturation in his game. He's working with the running game. I think they're trying to set him up for success. I think one of the things they're going to be working on, this is a receiver thing too, is to get a little bit more separation. He has to make some tough throws, seems like a lot of the time, and it's hard to do. It seems like not too many people were wide open. And I think if working on that, the receivers getting a little more, him getting a little more time, receivers getting open a little bit better, I think you're going to see more and more improvement, even more as the season goes on. But I think that's the biggest thing I see in him. And he's running the ball, I think, a little bit better in terms of when they need it. He's not out there as a running quarterback, but he's running the ball when it's a 3rd and 5 and no one's there. He's not afraid to just take it because he's a great athlete too.
Chuck, what have you seen from him from a leadership perspective? Because we've seen the great Penn State quarterbacks have been great leaders, yourself included. But we've seen guys who were great athletes or had great arms who necessarily weren't great quarterbacks. What have you seen from him from that leadership perspective?
I see on the field that he's not a selfish player. I like when a running back will make a play or they'll score a touchdown. He's in the end zone with them. He goes up to the offensive lineman. He likes to get everyone involved. And I think I see them coming to him a lot more. I saw him pregame. He had everyone around him. He was talking with everyone. And I think it's the process of being successful, because you could be a leader, but you got to be a doer too. And they're seeing him do some great things on the field, and they're circling the wagons around him.
Yeah, I mean, and it's, you can even go back to the last time he played Illinois. He really kind of looked lost, was less than 50% completion percentage, and even in that game, the only touchdown pass was thrown by Trey Potts.
Yeah, speaking of Illinois, 94, they brought the 94 team back. That was the signature drive that catapulted them to an unbeaten season. But, I was very disappointed that they did not recognize these guys individually. This is 30 years that have come back, and I don't know what the big rush is up there on their game day operation and what Pat Kraft is thinking or who's advising him. But these are some of your greatest players, greatest ambassadors. Give them a quick wave individually. You had Brady and Conlon and Rivera and Hardings, the whole offense, Collins.
Carter.
Yeah, well, he was announced, which was nice, but geez, everybody would like to have seen those guys and give them their moment.
I'm sorry, Neil, but you can't squeeze that in between the first and second quarter. You can't do it. I mean, that ceremony was ending. There were players on the field. They were getting ready to go. I mean, come on. Penn State used to be as good as anybody at honoring these great, great teams. Nobody has a tradition like Penn State's, and now we see this.
Yeah, build on it. Last year, 50-year anniversary of the 73 team. Got a group, like a group hug, a wave in the end zone. It's like
it's like a bunch of NIL donors there. You know what I mean?
What are you doing?
Give them a little bit more time.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me get that off my chest.
We were both angry about that in the press box.
Yeah, no. To me, I was on the field getting video of it, and it just kind of felt rushed, and it just kind of everyone's just standing there waving, and it just kind of felt like they could have done more.
Well, if we ever get Pat Kraft back on the show, maybe we could ask him about it.
All right, well, guys, we have one thing left to do, and every week it's crowning the Nitwit of the Week. Maybe a little controversy this week?
There's no controversy.
No controversy. All righty, well, we crown our Nitwit of the Week when we return on Nittany Nation Overtime.
Don't miss a minute of Nittany Nation Overtime, now also on Apple and Spotify.
The Nitwits are being brought to you by Brent Kogan Electrical Services, lighting the way for you. By NovaCare, Altoona and State College, the power of physical therapy. By Lions 24/7 with Fight On State, your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Monday.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
Nitwit of the Week time, and Mark, you're on the board.
Yeah, despite Neil trying to adjust the rules to give one to Al Pola.
Al Pola was closer in total score.
Let's change the rules that we've used for 28 years.
No pressure, Chuck.
All right, Neil,
the
what is the
on a
official
year and a half losing streak?
What's the official parameter for winning Nitwit of the Week?
It's supposed to be
Scoring
the total.
margin.
Yeah, scoring margin.
Not total anything.
You were 17, and the outcome was 14. Al was 24-14. I thought, hey, let's throw the guest the bone. He said, absolutely.
I said, let's do that on a week that you win.
Something tells me we wouldn't be hearing, well, maybe we should give it to the guest.
Anyway, you're on then.
So before we get to our pick of the week, one thing I did want to touch on was just the incredible crowd energy. Like, it felt like the whiteout, even though it wasn't the whiteout. I think everyone was behind James, and I think obviously the Brett Bielema quote, what is whiteout energy or whatever that is, might have even ignited the crowd.
Yeah, they did a great job. I mean, we talked about that goal line stand. I thought the crowd was a giant part of that as well.
Yeah, and those are some of the things that James really excels on. He started that the minute after the Kent State, maybe during the Kent State game. He had that
he
plan.
devised that.
Yeah, no, and obviously that wasn't the whiteout. That will be November 9th against Washington. We know it'll be a late afternoon or a primetime kickoff. I guess now it's time for
UCLA
Mark.
scores?
Yep.
Wow, I'll tell you what, you almost feel bad for the Bruins in this first year in the Big Ten. This is going to be a 9 a.m. kickoff for them on West Coast time. They're really struggling, kind of one of the worst offenses we've seen in the Big Ten in a while. I think Penn State's going to roll in this one. I will take it 42-13.
42-13. I'm trying to do some quick math. They just seem like they're not coming into the league at an ideal time, at least not for football. Basketball, we'll see.
Volleyball.
The fact that Penn State left a lot of points on the field this week, I think will bode well. I'm going to go a little bit bigger. I'm going to say Penn State 48, UCLA 10.
I'm going to go Penn State 41-10. You guys really hit it on the nail right there. Their offense is struggling. 9 a.m. kickoff. This is just a brutal trip coming all the way out to the East Coast, because usually whenever teams from the West and the East play, usually it's for a bowl game and you're wherever you're playing for a whole week. We're here. They are probably only coming up Friday night, and I think it's just, and then we saw it happen with Washington and Rutgers on Friday.
And they've already been at Hawaii and LSU, so they've been crisscrossing the nation.
I'm sure they appreciate being scheduled with LSU the first year. How about Chuck?
I'm going to go a little less, just because Penn State runs the ball so much, they eat up a lot of the clock, and not as much time maybe to score as much as you three like to say here. I'm going to say 28-7.
All right, Chuck, as we said, the pressure really is on you. It's been 15 weeks since the guest won. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for another great edition of Nittany Nation Overtime. We'll be back next week to recap the game against UCLA.
Thanks for watching WTAJ's Nittany Nation Overtime.
The Nitwits have been brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, a firm foundation for your financial future. By DeLeo Games, serving the community since 1945. By Reed and Solani Orthodontics, providing friendly, family-focused orthodontic care in Altoona, Bedford, and Huntington. By McAlear's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. By RE/MAX Results Realty Group, committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service. By Dorman's Jewelry, the answer is always Dorman's. By Brent Kogan Electrical Services, lighting the way for you. By NovaCare, Altoona and State College, the power of physical therapy. By Blair Candy Company, the one-stop shop for all your tailgating needs. Candy, snacks, paper supplies, and more. By Harry's Construction, if you can dream it, we can create it. By Lions 24/7 with Fight on State, your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Monday. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.